Get ready for the lesson. Pets. Some students are collecting money for a local pet shelter. The model shows that they have raised 60% of their $2,000 goal, or $1,200. And there's their chart underneath that evil, mean-looking dog. Okay, he might be kind of cute. So here's our model that we're going to use. And they want us to sketch the model and label using decimals instead of percents. So underneath that cute dog, they have the percents on the top, and we're going to replace those with decimals. So we get 0.0, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and 1.0. Number 2, sketch the model using fractions instead of percents. So we'll use the model again, and we'll get 0. We'll get 2/10. Notice we're not simplifying here. 4/10, 6/10, 8/10, and 1. Number 3, use these models to write two multiplication sentences that are equivalent to 60% of 2,000 equals 1,200. So the first model is the decimal, where we get 0.6 times 2,000 equals 1,200. You can do that math out and find out if that's right or not. Spoiler alert, it is. And then 3/5 times 2,000 equals 1,200. And in this case, in the model on number 2, it's 6/10, but we did simplify it to 3/5 here to do the math. Scaffolding questions. Number 1, when would a percent be greater than 1? When a percent is greater than 100%. Number 2, if you multiplied a number by a percent less than 100%, would the result be less than or greater than the original number? Less than. 100% would be the original number, right? So if it's less than 100%, it would be less than the original number. Number 3, what would you expect if the number you multiply by is greater than 100%? The result would be greater than the original number. If the original number is 100%, if it's greater than 100%, it's greater than the original number. Number 4, what decimal is equivalent to 75%? 0.75. Number 5, what decimal is equivalent to 65%? 0.65. Number 6, what decimal is equivalent to 140%? 1.40. Example, find the percent of a number. Number 1, find 5% of 300. You can use either method. Method 1, write the percent as a fraction. So we have 5%, and we know from previous lessons that we can make 5% a fraction by putting 5 over 100. Now we need to simplify it. The greatest common factor is 5, so we have 1/20th. Now if we take that 1/20th of 300, we say 1/20th times 300, and we remember that 300 can also be stated as 300 over 1. We can reduce the denominator of 20 with a numerator of 300. 20 is the greatest common factor, and it goes into 315 times. So the answer is 15. We look at the second method, write the percent as a decimal. We have 5%. We'll write it as 5 over 100, and when we divide that out, we get 0.05. Now we're going to take 0.05 of 300, which restated is 0.05 times 300, and if we multiply that out, we get 15. So 5% of 300 is 15. Choose your method. A, 40% of 70. Method 1, write the percent as a fraction. 40%, so we'll rewrite that as 40 over 100. And if we simplify that, we'll get 2/5. 2/5 of 70 is the same as 2/5 times 70. And remember that 70 can also be stated as 70 over 1. So we can simplify the denominator of 5 and the numerator of 70. 5 will go into 70 14 times. So then we multiply 2 times 14 and get 28. We do that as a percent, as a decimal. 40% equals 40 over 100 equals 0.40. 0.40 of 70, or restated as 0.40 times 70. We multiply that out, we get 28. So 40% of 70 is 28. 15% of 100. Method 1, write the percent as a fraction. 15% will be 15 over 100. And we can simplify that down to 3/20ths using the GCF of 5. So if we take 3/20ths of 100, we know F means multiplication. 3/20ths times 100. And if we simplify 100 with 20, we get 5 and 1. 3 times 5 is 15. Method 2, write the percent as a decimal. 15% equals 15 over 100 equals 0.15. And 0.15 of 100, or 0.15 times 100, just rewritten, equals 15. So 15% of 100 is 15. 55% of 160. Write the percent as a fraction. 55%, 55 over 100 equals 11/20th once we use the GCF of 5. 11/20th of 160, rewritten 11/20th times 160, and we're going to simplify 160 and 20 because 160 is really 160 over 1. So 20 once, 20 goes into 168 times. If we multiply that out, we get 88 over 1, or 88. Write the percent as a decimal. 55% equals 55 over 100. If we divide 55 by 100, we get 0.55. 0.55 of 160, or rewritten as 0.55 times 160, we get 88. So 55% of 160 is 88. I've been continuing to do both methods, and I probably will throughout. You do not have to do both ways on your homework. You just have to use the way that you're most comfortable with. You are responsible on some homework to do it either as a fraction or as a decimal. Example, find the percents greater than 100%. Find 120% of 75. Write the percent as a fraction. So 120% equals 120 over 100, which equals 6 over 5. And we would use the greatest common factor of 20. 6/5 of 75, which really means 6/5 times 75. We can simplify 5 and 75 with GCF of 5, and then we would multiply 6 times 15 to get 90. Write the percent as a decimal. 120% equals 120 over 100. If we divide 120 by 100, we get 1.2. 1.2 of 75, or rewritten as 1.2 times 75, equals 90. So 120% of 75 is 90. Choose your method. 150% of 20. So write percent as a fraction. 150% equals 150 over 100. And if we simplify that with the greatest common factor of 50, we get 3 over 2. So then we'll multiply 3 over 2 times 20, and we can simplify 2 and 20. And I'm only showing you how I'm simplifying that so that you remember that 20 or any whole number can be over itself. That's kind of just a visual reminder I'm trying to show you guys. That's why on the 150 over 100, I'm not putting in the slashes with the factors, and but just letting you know that. So then we multiply it out, we get 30 over 1, which equals 30. Write the percent as a decimal. 150% equals 150 over 100, which equals 1.5. So we're going to multiply 1.5 times 20, and we get 30. So 150% of 20 is 30. 160% of 35. Write the percent as a fraction. So 160% equals 160 over 100 equals 8 over 5. Greatest common factor, 20. So 8/5 of 35, or 8/5 times 35, we can simplify, and we get 7 times 8 is 56. And if we do method 2, write the percent as a decimal. 160% equals 160 over 100, which equals 1.6 if we divide 160 by 100. 1.6 times 35 equals 56. So 160% of 35 is 56. Real world example. Analyze graphs. Refer to the graph. If 275 students took the survey, how many can be expected to have 3 televisions each in their house? So if we look at 3, it has 23%. To find 23% of 275, write the percent as a decimal, then multiply. So 23% of 275 is the same as 23% times 275. And we're going to skip a step here and not put 23 over 100 because we know the next step would just be 0.23 times 275. And if we multiply that out, and you can use a calculator to do this, you get 63.25. So about 63 students can expect to have 3 televisions each in their houses. Check your progress. Analyze graphs. Refer to the graph. Suppose 455 students took the survey. How many can be expected to have more than 4 televisions? So if we look over at the graph, more than 4 is 25%. So to find 25% of 455, write the percent as a decimal, then multiply. 25% of 455 equals 25% times 455. Those are the exact same statements, correct? And we're going to change the percent to a decimal. 0.25 times 455 equals 113.75. So about 114 students can expect to have more than 4 televisions each in their houses. Additional examples: 8% of 125. Write the percent as a fraction. We're going to do both ways again so that you are very well versed in it. 8% equals 8 over 100. And if we use the greatest common factor of 4, we get 2 over 25. So 2 over 25 times 125. And we can simplify 25 and 125. We get 10. Write the percent as a decimal. 8% equals 8 over 100. And if we divide 8 by 100, we get 0.08. 0.08 times 125 equals 10. So 8% of 125 is 10. Number 2, 125% of 64. As a fraction, 125% equals 125 over 100. Greatest common factor is 25, so we get 5 over 4. 5/4 times 64, and we can simplify by 4, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. 64 divided by 4 is 16. 16 times 5 is 80. And then write as a decimal, 125% is 125 over 100. If we divide 125 by 100, we get 1.25. 1.25 times 64 equals 80. So 125% of 64 is 80. Number 3, languages. The graph shows that 30% of the people in a community speak Spanish as their first language. If a community has 800 people, how many people can be expected to speak Spanish as their first language? To find 30% of 800, write the percent as a decimal, then multiply. So we have 30% of 800. We're going to write it as 30% times 800, which equals 0.30 times 800, which equals 240. So about 240 people can be expected to speak Spanish as their first language. Here's your homework for tonight. Head on over to Google Classroom and submit it. And I will see you in class. Thank you. Have a great day.